Hey all you Slashaholics, welcome back to Slash Sisters. I am Slash Sister Jen.
And if that's you, then I guess I'm Slash Sister Hallie. Thank you for not making me say all this.
Yeah.
And
Don't worry, I'll make you do it again.
Oh, I know you will. And we want to welcome you back to our channel for horror movie reviews by horror movie fans.
That's us.
At least every Friday.
Yeah, every Friday. And if you're new here, welcome. We do fun horror stuff here. So if you like horror, we suggest you go ahead and slash that subscribe button because we are here for you every single Friday with a new horror movie review.
Yeah, whether you want it or not, we're here.
Yep.
Today we're going to be taking a walk down memory lane, almost 28 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are so old.
It's okay. It's okay. This is definitely a very nostalgic film for me. There is...
Oh, no, it is for me, too, because when this was, like, on HBO and everything like that, like, when it first hit HBO, I watched it every single chance I got.
Constantly.
It was one of my favorite films of the late 90s, early 2000s. But we're going to be taking a look at one of the most prolific and award-winning directors of the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
He actually got a start in... B cheesy horror films, didn't he?
Exactly. So he may be one of the most prolific directors. Really, really well known for his fantasy series, many of which. That's right, folks. We're talking about Peter Jackson. He, is well known for things like The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Like that Peter Jackson.
Right.
But he did get his start in horror, and this isn't even his start.
This isn't his start. This is the last horror film that he did, though.
Exactly.
Because he hasn't really done anything.
No, he's a big director with lots of things to do.
Right. Let's just take a moment to talk about Weta Effects.
Oh my gosh, Weta.
So Weta Effects, when they actually initially started this, was only about 3 months old.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I read they were 3 years in.
Oh, 3 years. 3 years. Okay.
They actually they formed when Peter Jackson was making Heavenly Creatures.
Right, but they primarily were focusing on practical effects, not digital effects, and this film forced them to step up their game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the amount of CGI in this film was, honestly, it was like the biggest undertaking any studio had ever undertaken
at that particular point in time. It was the most heavily used CGI film for 1996 standards and prior, obviously.
Right. While it was such a huge undertaking that the film actually took 6 months to film the actual movie because of so many different layers. You had to have ghosts acting. They had to film things.
They had to film it twice so the ghost actors could interact with the alive actors.
Exactly. But on top of that, it actually took 18 months for Weta to finish all of the computer graphics and imaging for...
Yeah, they actually had to reach out to Universal, one, to get more money and more time and more hands on deck, because they still had, 4 months before premiere.
Yeah, and they wanted to move the premiere up, too. I mean, they were pushing to get this movie in the theaters as fast as possible. But Weta would go on to do the effects on not just the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit franchises, but both Avatar films.
Yeah,
so,
Weta Effects has really got their foothold into the special effects genre, and it really all started with this film.
For sure. They're easily, I think they're the most influential.
They're up there with ILM. ILM is Industrial Light and Magic, which was started by Lucas. They initially did models and stuff like that specifically for Star Wars, but they've gotten into the digital effects and everything like that. But I think Weta might actually be above them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're super award-winning as well. So with all of that incredible introduction, let's tell you about this movie that we're talking about,
Eh?
What movie are we talking about, Hallie?
Are we from Connect and Stand all of a sudden?
Maybe.
Sorry to any Canadian fans we have out there, but, you are a bunch of knuckleheads. No, but we are going to take a trip to New Zealand.
Yes.
Because Peter Jackson is very, very up there with the aspect that he thinks that New Zealand filmmaking is on par with Hollywood filmmaking.
Absolutely.
So, this film was entirely shot in New Zealand, even though it was made to look like...
the Midwest, I think, is what they said.
I always thought it was a coastal town, but yeah whatever. We're talking about the 1996 entry that is The Frighteners.
Yay! So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this fun movie.
We start our film with at a creepy old house where Patricia Bradley, played by the absolutely stunning
Motherfucking Wallace.
Stone.
Yes.
Stone. D. Stone. She didn't even go by D. Wallace.
No, she was tagged in the credits. It says D. Wallace Stone.
IMDb tagged her as D. Stone, but okay.
Really? Well, in the actual if you see it in the movie credits, it says D. Wallace.
Anyway, she's being antagonized by some sort of entity.
Yes.
Because it's like coming through like the wallpaper, the carpet, and at the time those effects were great, but now they are shit.
Oh yeah.
That did not hold up.
No, not well at all. But again, in 1996, I remember watching this and going, "Whoa, that's so cool."
Mm-hmm. Agreed. No, I absolutely agree with you. I mean,
timing, right?
I just wanted to point out that that aspect of the digital effects did not age well.
Yeah, that and pretty much anything having to do with the Reaper. The character.
Reaper and the worm. At the end of the film.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
We will. After tearing through the house, the apparition is shot by Patricia's mother, and then we cut straight to the title card. With a flash of black mist.
Yeah, title card. Next, we are introduced to the town Fairwater, where there is some sort of strange epidemic of heart attacks happening throughout the town. Apparently, seemingly healthy people are just dropping dead of a heart attack.
Yeah, and it looks like a heart attack, but then when they actually,
their arteries are clean as a whistle.
So there's no reason for them to have
the
had
sheriff or chief of police or whatever actually states as much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We also learn about a killing spree that had taken place 30 years previously in the local hospital that was carried out by a hospital orderly named Johnny Bartlett.
Next, we meet very, very bad driver and psychic investigator Frank Bannister.
He is the worst driver.
Well, I mean, he did get in a car accident and his... Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get
a car accident that killed his wife.
It's later, but we find that out later.
Yeah, but we do find that out. I mean, it's...
But Frank Bannister is played by the incredibly talented Michael J. Fox, even though he's been pigeonholed in like those young roles, especially with Back to the Future and everything like that. He is immensely talented.
Yes, he is.
Despite that pigeonholing. Frank hangs around the local cemetery looking to drum up businesses at funerals.
Yeah, kind of scummy. Anyways, after leaving the most recent funeral, he crashes his car into a front yard through a fence of a local health nut named Ray Linsky.
Ray's wife is the new doctor in town, and she is visiting the Bradley home to treat Patricia's hand, which was cut during the opening ghost attack
or entity attack.
Yeah, because we don't know. We don't know it's a ghost at this point.
She is informed by Mrs. Bradley that Patricia was the accomplice to Johnny Bartlett during his infamous killing spree 30 years before.
We find out through a television program that Dr. Linsky.
Yeah. Lucy.
Lucy, yeah, there we go. Watched after this that Patricia was charged as an accomplice to murder and was imprisoned, but because she was only 15 at the time, the murder spree, she was not given the death sentence like Johnny Bartlett was.
Yeah. We also learned that 5 years earlier, she had gotten a conditional release from prison and is now living with her mom in the family home.
Right.
Which is where we saw her at the beginning of the movie.
Watching the TV shows, Lucy and Ray Linsky, promptly after turning off the TV, paranormal things began happening around their house.
Yeah. Like the bed lifts up and levitates. All of their cabinets open up and stuff. Things start flying around the house. And they find Frank's business card, miraculously, even though he had left it with Ray earlier, and Ray said, I tore this up, where'd this come from, blah, blah, blah. But basically, Lucy's like, I'm calling him, and they get Frank over to the house, and Frank kind of uses this as his chance to not have to pay for that fence.
Yeah, and he also tries to get a little extra money because he can't be out of expenses.
Well, no, of course not. What about an extra $100 for expenses?
I loved it when he pulled the pistol out with the holy water in it, though. That was just fucking hilarious.
So funny. It's like, what? Holy water.
On his way out, he sees a number 37 on Ray's forehead.
Yeah. It's right after this that we finally get to see ghosts in the movie. Hey. Stuart and Cyrus, the ghosts responsible for haunting Alinsky's house, are let out of the truck once Frank gets back to his house. Trunk. Yes, out of the trunk of his car. Because he can't be seen riding around with it. He doesn't want ectoplasm all over his car.
Right. Like anybody else can see it besides him.
Right. He doesn't want it though. Ew,
right. Cyrus is actually played by the incredibly talented She McBride.
Yeah, incredible. He was awesome in this movie.
Yes,
so much fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. We learn that the ghosts have been helping Frank with his little psychic investigations.
Yeah.
We also get to see Weta effects show off their talents with the actually very good CGI of the ghosts. It wasn't necessarily CGI; they were kind of superimposed.
It was like a blue screen superimposed
which is exactly what they did years ago. They'd film them on a black screen or whatever,
right?
And
but just the way that these looked, and on top of that, like during this bit when they kind of are all like hanging out around Frank's house. And, like, you see, like, a head explode. And, like those things were definitely done with CGI. Mm-hmm. I think those things I think they aged well, considering that they're done on ghosts. I love it. I think it's hilarious and fun.
The ghost dog is obviously CGI. There's no way in hell they got a dog to do all that. Right, but that's incredibly good.
Yeah. It in-walks the judge, who is played by John friggin' Aston, of all people. You can't, if you look really closely, you can tell, but he has heavy prosthetics. Yes, very, very. But ghostly guns a-blazing, looking for his damn jaw that fell off, and the ghostly dog is chewing on the jaw. And yeah, basically we just get like this whole big segment of the ghosts chewing up the scenery, and it's fun as hell. I love it.
I also have to point out here too that the incredible special effects prosthetics that are on the judge's face, while not applied by him, were created by the immensely talented and late Rick Baker.
Yes. He was working on another film at the same time and was not able to apply the actual...
Right.
But he created the entire look.
He designed it, the entire look.
Yep.
A short time later, we find out that Ray had died the same night that him and Frank had the confrontation. Doesn't look too good for Frank, does it?
No, it really doesn't.
And Ray's ghost now begins to follow Frank because Frank can see him.
Yes.
Lucky for Frank.
Yeah. Basically, Ray's like wandering around and he sees Frank.
He's running down the street. He's running down the street trying to get to his fucking funeral, and runs into Frank and knocks Frank over.
Yeah, for sure. But we get another kind of awesome scene with more ghosts when Frank and Ray make it to the cemetery.
Yes, and here we get one of my favorite actors. I mean, he's not like a favorite actor, but love
he's such a great character actor.
I love him in everything that he's done.
Yes.
He's best known for playing like drill sergeant roles, specifically in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, which he was not meant to be in that one.
Right. He was a drill sergeant.
He was a consultant.
Yes.
He was a consultant, making sure that the drill sergeants were doing their job, and
basically
Stanley
we're
Kubrick was like,
yeah, you're better at this, so we're going to make you do it.
Anyway, different movie. We don't cover that stuff,
yeah.
But we have covered Stanley Kubrick, so. But we're talking about Arlie Emery. He comes in, and he honestly is a drill sergeant again.
Yeah, he's literally his character from Full Metal Jacket.
Right. You think he actually might have been the real character from... Because remember,
I mean, he calls him Hiles. I don't remember what the name of the drill sergeant is from.
I don't remember that he had a name.
We'd have to look that up.
I don't
we'll look it up
and
we'll put it down in the bottom.
I don't remember that he had a name.
It could be.
Kyle shot him dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I never made that correlation.
I never really did either, but I like
that's
that.
fun. That's fun.
In my little headcanon, he's definitely
the drill sergeant from Full
Metal Jacket.
All right.
Period.
We'll
New
just go with
headcanon.
that. New headcanon, right? Anyway,
he kind of just gives like his whole routine. He
right,
is
right.
who he is.
He is who he is, but he absolutely despises Frank Bannister. He thinks that using ghosts to put, and we get the name drop of the film, the Frighteners on people, is a disgusting display of using your talents, abilities, basically. I guess.
Yeah. And he also kind of like keeps all the ghosts in the cemetery in line too.
Well, I mean, because Frank later states that, he states at some point through the film, I can't remember where it was, that ghosts are normally confined to the cemetery, but sometimes they escape, which is why he has 3 ghosts in his employ.
Right.
It employs.
Yeah, if you can call it that. After the funeral, and after the ghost Ray falls on top of Ray and onto his own corpse and freaks the fuck out and then gets buried, Lucy and Frank end up talking, and Ray kind of gives Frank a message to give to Lucy.
Well, Lucy wanted to talk to Frank because she knows that he can see ghosts, or believes that he can.
Right.
Not knowing, actually. Meanwhile, the police are getting very suspicious of Frank, with the chief of police also questioning him at the funeral, since he had been the last person to see Linsky alive before he had died, besides Lucy.
Right. The next night, or I assume it's kind of the next night. They don't really give
they don't have a time frame for it.
I'm assuming it's the next night. Frank and Lucy go to a restaurant that was actually in a reservation that Ray had made for their anniversary. So they go to this restaurant to kind of like. Ray comes along too, obviously. Ghost Ray is there.
And Ray convinced Frank to buy flowers for Lucy and all this other sick shit.
Yeah, it's very strange. But yeah, basically they're kind of there and celebrating their anniversary in a way, and she's trying to talk to Ray.
Honestly, she's trying to find out what Frank had, or what Ray had done with the money, because she needed money to help pay for the funeral and all those other expenses and stuff like that.
Ray seems like a real piece of work.
Oh yeah, he's a piece of shit because he lost it in bad investments. Mm-hmm. Anyway, at some point throughout the dinner, Frank excuses himself and goes to the bathroom, at which he sees another individual with a number carved onto their forehead, or glowing on their forehead.
So basically the man ends up being attacked in the bathroom by what I'm going to call the Grim Reaper.
I mean, we're led to believe he's the Grim Reaper.
Now,
he carries a scythe, he's a hooded figure, he's got like a skeletal hand and all that
he's wearing a cloak and stuff. I mean, so, I mean, that's what we're going to call him for now, is the Reaper. So, yeah.
And once again, Frank is the last person to see the man alive.
That ain't suspicious at all.
I love the line that Damaris has later.
We'll get there. Frank is able to chase the Reaper, kind of like out of the restaurant. Like he follows it out of the restaurant, watches it all over town as it like jumps on the top of buildings. This whole sequence where he's chasing the Reaper is where I really feel like the CGI did not age well.
No.
It is what it is.
I mean, we're talking about a film that's 28 years old, where the digital effects company that was doing the CGI was
brand
never
new.
done it before.
Yeah, brand new.
I give them props that it's aged as well as it has.
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge undertaking. I think it's aged pretty well. I think a lot of things have aged pretty well considering.
I mean, all things considered,
yes, absolutely.
Lucy is brought to the police station so that they can ask her about what happened at the restaurant, and this is where we finally get to meet arguably the most memorable character in the movie.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, let's welcome to our channel, Mr. Jeffrey Combs! This character is hilarious. I'm pretty sure this was my introduction to Jeffrey Combs.
It was mine too.
I had not seen, at this point, I mean, I was, 13 when this movie came out. So, like, I hadn't seen Reanimator. I hadn't really dug that deep into the horror and stuff like that yet.
Reanimator.
Oh, we're going to get there. You're going to watch it.
I know.
You're going to watch it. It's one of my favorites.
Mr. Jeffrey Combs plays special agent for the FBI, Milton Dammers. And he has a haircut that is very reminiscent of Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
Which was his choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But he has lots of experience with the occult and supernatural.
Yeah.
So he says. He's also the most squirrely little guy ever who gets scared when women raise their voices, which is fucking hilarious.
I know. Don't worry, Lucy uses it as a weapon later.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Agent Dammers also clearly has a pretty bad case of hemorrhoids, as we've seen throughout the rest of the movie, because the man refuses to sit down. And at one point, he, like, goes to sit down, and he kind of leans like this, and he's like, nope, like, stands right back up. Anyways, but he proceeds to tell us a little tale of what happened to Frank's wife.
5 years earlier, Frank, who was then a successful architect, was driving with his wife. Actually, they got into a terrible fight at the house.
They did, because he covered what should have been her garden with a
concrete and poured himself a basketball
court. Yes.
So they were pissed when they got in the car. According to Dammers, he had been drinking earlier that day, and the construction people said that when they got into the car, the arguing continued. Yeah. And apparently that argument continued until they crashed and resulted in Deborah's death, or so.
As far as we know, the crash resulted in Debbie's death. She was thrown from the car, and her body was found 15 yards away. Frank was found wandering the woods hours later with no memory of what happened after the crash.
Right. His wife's body had the number 13 carved into her forehead, and Frank's utility knife was never found.
Yeah, missing.
He bought
never found
3 new blades.
No, 7 new blades. 7 new blades that morning.
That was whatever. Darius is trying to make a connection with the numbers, and he just has this little freak out moment. It's comedy gold. Honestly.
Yeah, it really is. Meanwhile, Frank continues to chase the Reaper around town. Again, making it easier to implicate himself because he sees
Yeah, he clearly didn't think that one through, did he?
Yeah. I mean, he keeps showing up every time there's a death. Like, duh, what is wrong with you? Ugh. Anyways.
He sees the number 40 carved on the editor of a local paper's forehead. And
Magda.
And she thinks he is threatening to kill her. Magda Reese Jones.
Yeah, I know.
Or Magda Jones Reese or whatever.
Something like
it was some stupid fucking name.
Police arrive and try to arrest him after the sheriff basically was like, go pick him up and get him in here. You know, he's been at too many of the scenes for it to be a coincidence.
Right.
But he is barely rescued by a judge. Basically.
Of all people.
Yeah. I mean, the Reaper's there. The judge, shows up and starts shooting at the Reaper. Eventually, he falls into a mummy's tomb and then does some really
No, he doesn't
gross...
fall into it. He looks at the mummy, sees the, x-ray. Oh, she's pretty. Good teeth.
Yeah, gross.
Mm-hmm. Frank is able to escape with the help of Cyrus and Stewart, and he kidnaps the editor in an attempt to try to keep her safe from the Reaper.
Yeah, he kind of punches her and
he knocks her the fuck out.
Carries her out the front door. I mean, he's trying to get her away from the Reaper, but
he's just making himself look bad.
Sure don't look good
in the eyes of the law.
Yeah, no joke. He ends up driving erratically.
Of course,
Frank driving erratically,
right?
And ends up crashing his car on the same exact road where he crashed the car when his wife died.
Yep.
And the Reaper basically finally catches up with them and catches up with the editor, squeezing her heart until she dies. But at the same time, Frank is also he's in the place where his wife died, and he starts having these little memories, flashbacks.
Like his memory's coming back to him because this is almost exactly what happened 5 years ago.
In the exact same spot.
Right.
So, yeah.
Milton is damn sure that they'll never see Frank again.
He's like, he's gone. We're never gonna see him again, as he's saying this.
Frank turns himself into the police station.
Just walks right in.
And is sat down and questioned by Dammers, who claims that Frank's first victim was his wife, and that he had been killing people telekinetically ever since then.
I mean, every single time that Jeffrey Combs is on screen, he is just eating up the whole scene.
Yeah, he is.
Everything. He's so, I mean, the way that he talks, the excitement, the way that he's literally like almost twitching when he talks. It's just...
I thought it was just, I mean, I know it's like part of his character or whatever that he developed with like the whole like...
But you thought that was just like maybe how Jeffrey Combs actually is?
Well, not at first, no.
Right.
I mean, maybe now.
I don't know. From what I hear, he's a really interesting and awesome guy.
I would love to talk to him.
I would too. I would love to have a conversation with him. Lucy ends up going to visit Frank's house, and while she's there, phone call comes through, and she hears on the answering machine Mrs. Bradley basically like begging Frank to come to the house because someone was attacking Patricia. Because
Patricia had been communing with the evil one. Lucy rushes to the Bradley house. Fucking dumb, but whatever.
Ray tries to stop her. He's like, no, don't go in there.
It's not like she can fucking see him.
I know.
But she gets to the house, and the house is like undulating and all this other stuff. Like it is just,
she can't see it.
It is just cursing with bad auras.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
To try to get Patricia out of there. While there, though, she discovers Frank's utility knife and leaves to go back to the police station to tell Frank. Also, Ray's ghost gets reaped.
Yeah, that's right.
Because this is the last we see of Ray.
Yeah. Sad.
He gets his face cut off, and then his whole fucking like ghostly form is thrown out onto her hood of her car.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a cool scene.
That was really cool. Yeah, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like things like that aged really well.
Right, that aged well. The Reaper, not so much.
Not so much at all.
We'll get to it, but when we find out who the Reaper is, that aged well. That effect aged well.
I would agree. With you. We're getting there. We're almost there. I promise. While she's visiting Frank, Lucy is at the police station visiting Frank.
Which I'm surprised they actually let her in.
I know.
Given everything that's happened with the suspicion that he killed her husband and all this other shit.
And that he killed his own wife. I mean, come on. But while she's there in his cell with him, locked in the cell with him, this police force, whatever.
It's New Zealand filmmaking for you at its finest.
He sees a number 41 on her forehead, and then the Reaper shows up.
Stuart and Cyrus attempt to ward it off again, but are reaped in the process.
Yeah.
Because this is the last that we see of both of them as well.
Yep. Well,
which, who would have thought that souls could be reaped?
Yeah. I
actually, the more I think about it, the more it doesn't make any fucking sense, because Frank tells Ray that he missed his light. He missed his tunnel. In about a year's time, he'll get another chance to cross over. He needs to take it. Those spirits didn't take their tunnels, right?
Yeah.
So if they're reaped as that, how do they cross over?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a glaring plot hole that I've never realized until this moment right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways, Lucy and Frank are barely able to escape. And they come up with a plan to
cryogenically freeze him and stop his heart.
Yeah, stop his heart so that he can have an out-of-body experience in order to fight the Reaper.
Initially, he was just going to blow his fucking brains out.
He was just going to kill himself. And she was like, wait a minute.
And she stopped.
I think I have a better solution here.
While Frank is having the out-of-body experience, Dammers shows up and takes Lucy as his prisoner and drives her to the cemetery. All the while, Frank is somehow managing to keep the Reaper away from Lucy.
Yeah. He kind of like wakes up and comes out of his body and like falls through some shit, like gets hit by a car. He doesn't
over by several.
Several cars.
Right.
He doesn't really get his body quite yet, his ghost body.
Right. I do love the fact that when Dammer starts the car, "Don't Fear the Reaper" is being played blaring on the radio.
Yes. Dammers then, kind of gets out of the car at the cemetery, and well, actually, I guess he kind of reveals it in the car, but he reveals that he was a victim of the Manson family and was held as their sex slave for 6 months. Anyways, he then removes his shirt to show all of the scars that he has received from the multiple different cults that he was a part of in his time as an agent. And basically he's kind of trying to show that, like, I gave all of this for my country.
Right. He's so fucked up. Ghost Frank shows up and starts driving the car, making gamers think that he's doing it with the power of his mind.
I'm doing this with the
power of mind! Please.
So great.
You are so delusional.
Oh, I love it. It makes me laugh so hard every single time. I'm just like, The ghosts of the cemetery fight.
The drill sergeant tries to, and then he gets
literally sliced in half
with the scythe.
Yeah, with the scythe. And even though he is reaped, Frank takes his weapons and shoots the ever-living shit out of the entity, the Reaper.
The Reaper. This leaves behind several piles of ectoplasmic goo.
Yeah.
That one pile turns into this gross, grotesque, like demon-looking face.
Almost looks like a Necronomicon. Almost.
Might have been influenced.
Yes, for sure.
Probably was.
Yes.
But Frank proceeds to grab it and just starts smacking the ever-living shit out of it against a mausoleum, and then throwing it up against a tombstone, revealing that the face is Johnny fucking Bartlett!
Johnny fucking Bartlett. Go figure.
Right.
And he would have gotten away with it too if it
wasn't for
these
the meddling kids!
Johnny proclaims that he got a score of 40! And that all the ghosts, shortly after that, all of the ghosts, the souls of the people that he killed surround Frank and begin thanking him for taking down Johnny, basically.
Yeah, I just want to shake the hand of the man that finally avenged my death.
Yeah.
And that's when Frank notices the number carved into his forehead, and he's like,
which was the number 12.
Yeah, and he's like, Johnny carved it in my corpse while I lay dying. Best line I've ever heard in a fucking film.
Yeah. Yep. Johnny proclaims that he got that score of 40, and, we assume, as he drips down, that he's gone. But,
Frank jumps into the mausoleum after him,
realizing that the sludge was probably going to, reform, I guess.
Right, which, by the way, I never understood this, because it's an underground mausoleum.
Yeah.
Do they have those? I've never seen one here in the States.
Maybe in New Zealand they do.
Right. Anywho, he jumps in there, is tackling him, beating him down. The CGI here is shit. But before, the ectoplasmic face, that was beautifully done CGI.
The face is wonderful.
Right.
Absolutely wonderful.
I wonder if
the whole muck body down in the mausoleum, not great.
Anyway, Frank wrestles with him until he pulls the scythe out of his body and goes to reap him himself, and unfortunately, he's being shocked back to life because Lucy got away and needed to revive him because any longer he'd be permanently
dead. Dead.
Yeah.
So Frank tells Lucy that they need to save Patricia to get her out of the house because at this point they think Patricia is a victim, and Johnny is coming for her.
Right. Lucy arrives at the house to save Patricia, but she begins acting erratically.
Yeah.
Very erratically.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to see the ghost of Johnny lovingly touch her face.
Mm-hmm. And she's responding like she's
in kind.
Happy.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Lucy goes upstairs
to get Mrs. Bradley.
Kind of like she's trying to get Patricia and Mrs. Bradley to leave the house with her.
Mm-hmm. Because Lucy's trying to be the good person here and save the two innocent souls.
Exactly. But she goes upstairs to find Mrs. Bradley has been murdered. Stabbed to death.
Patricia killed her.
Well. Mm-hmm.
And now we get the most feral version of Dee Wallace to ever be put on film.
I mean, feral.
Yeah. While being urged by Johnny, she begins attacking, firing the shotgun at Lucy and Frank, who has just arrived at the house.
Yes. They take Johnny's ashes after they
realize
that it's Johnny's ashes, because earlier she had told Lucy that it was her father's ashes, right?
Because her father committed suicide after the acts that she had done years ago. Yeah,
Right. But so they realize that it's Johnny's ashes. They take the ashes, and once again we get this stupid horror movie trope of like, let's get it to hollow ground because it's gonna be safe if we get it to hollow ground. Anyways, Frank and Lucy take the ashes to the hospital because Lucy remembers that there's a chapel in the old hospital, and she's like, we'll take it to the chapel and lay him to rest.
And of course the hospital is long since abandoned and derelict and everything like that.
Very much so. Yep. I mean, that's the hospital that the murders happened.
Right.
And the home, the Bradley home, is in front of the hospital because her dad was the director of the hospital, I think. Anyways, Patricia is still hot on their trail and chases them through the hospital, all while Frank is having flashbacks of the original murder spree.
He wasn't even there.
Like, he was literally
you can't
call it a flashback.
It was like he was being astral projected there.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of having an out-of-body experience, seeing what was happening in the past, but he was still walking around the hospital in present day.
Yeah.
So, it's a very weird sequence, and I attribute this to his psychic telekinetic,
for sure,
or not telekinetic, but psychic abilities and being able to resonate with the dead on a different frequency.
Yeah.
Whatever.
For sure.
Dammers turns up to the hospital and somehow manages to get Johnny's ashes and dumps them out an open window because he's a fucktard.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, what, you want these? What? Anyways, Dammers shoots at Frank, but then...
Frank says, you are such an asshole.
Yeah.
Dammers is like, yes, I am. I am an asshole. An asshole with an Uzi. Again, another great fucking line.
He's just so great. He is... Oh my gosh, I love that character so much. So he shoots Frank, but then promptly is shot in the face by Patricia.
Oh, God, that was such a great...
And the immediate, like, as soon as his head disappears, it turns into a ghost head.
Right. Only in certain versions, though.
Oh, really?
I've watched televised versions of this, like, on, like, network televisions, and the ghost head's not there.
Really? Weird. Anyways...
Yeah, I mean, it is weird to see like the ghostly head still there on his shoulders.
Yeah, it's kind of fun though. Yeah, right. I like it.
Frank, he doesn't. So he sees that there's like a minor hole in the floorboard, and that's how he evades getting shot because Patricia actually took aim at him, and he falls backwards and goes through
like four floors.
4 floors, and still lives after being shot and falls through 4 floors of hospital. Patricia and Lucy are able to get to Frank, but Frank, having more flashbacks of his wife's death,
his wife's death now.
Right, but he sees and realizes that it was Johnny Bartlett and Patricia that are responsible for her death. Like she wasn't actually dead when the car accident happened. Yeah, and Johnny's spirit, or as the Reaper, I think he was the Reaper at the time, killed his wife, and then Patricia, using Frank's box cutter, carved the 13 into her head, and then took the box cutter back with her. That's how it ended up in her house. That's why it wasn't even in her house. It was in Mrs. Bradley's room, her mom's room. Right. But then Frank dies again. Yeah, he gets choked to death with a shotgun because Patricia ran out of shells. Oops. And, while he's in ghost form, he actually reaches around Patricia and pulls her soul out of her. Not quite sure how that one works. Me either, cool. But that's how it worked in this circumstance. And then, she gets her tunnel, and he pulls her up the tunnel. Well, then Johnny starts bringing the fuck out. Was it her tunnel or his tunnel? Because why would she go to fucking heaven? Good call. It probably was his tunnel. It was. I guarantee it was his tunnel. Yeah, you're probably right. But he tries to pull her up into the tunnel with him. Well, he does. He does. And Johnny jumps up through the tunnel to follow them to pull Patricia back. But this tunnel, after he gets Patricia and Frank goes all the way up to heaven, proclaims that they're going to go back to settle the score and get more bodies. Yeah. But the tunnel goes from... Because that damn cannibal in Russia has them beat.
They dropped so many serial killer names in this movie. It's hilarious.
They truly did.
That damn Russian cannibal.
Right. But the tunnel changes from like this like heavenly aura like glow to a giant worm that drags him straight to hell.
Yeah. Yeah, that bit of CGI did not age well.
No, it did not. Like, the CGI for, like, the superimposed ghost over the scene looked phenomenal. But when the, like, snake worms start going through their eyes and in their mouth and all this other stuff, it just looks so shit.
It's trash. But, you know, it was the
28
time
years.
It was.
28 years.
Now Frank is standing in heaven with Stuart and Cyrus.
And they have a change of wardrobe because Cyrus was complaining about his Mod Squad outfit.
Right,
and Frank's like, look, you died in the 70s. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and Stuart got an update, too. He doesn't look like he's from the 50s anymore. But he even gets a little visit from his wife, Debbie, who tells him that he needs to go back,
that he needs to go home.
And to be happy.
They tell him that he needs to go home. And he's like, but I am home. And they're like, no.
Not yet. Not exactly. It's not your time.
Yeah, they push him back and tell him to start living.
Yeah. And she, as he's going back down, she I don't know if you can actually hear it, but she says, be happy. Yeah. Which...
I hear it. I heard it.
Makes my heart. As a widow, as someone who has lost their spouse, like, I can't imagine getting to have even just a half a second to have him tell me, like, be happy. You know, like that.
After Frank is sent back to Earth, we have a slight time jump forward.
Yeah,
and
just a little bit, I think.
I would say maybe within a week.
Yeah.
You know, maybe. But Frank and Lucy are now together, as they were hinting at they were going to be getting together throughout the entire film.
I mean, they were...
It was there. It was in the signs.
You know, something that I noticed, because, like, Ray is tagging along with her when she goes to visit Frank's house the first time when Frank's like in prison and whatever, and she sees the garden that he planted where the basketball court used to be, and Ray says this line, he's like, waste of a perfectly good basketball court. I very much feel like Ray
was
Frank before the accident.
Yeah, I can
very
see
much
that.
so.
I can see
like
that.
They were very, very similar to each other.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyways.
They're now together, and they're tearing down Frank's unfinished dream home.
Yes.
I'm assuming to build a new home for themselves.
That's what I'm thinking, too. Then they get a visit from the sheriff, who now has his own little tag-along, named Ghost Dammers. And he looks fucking miserable sitting in the back of that car, too.
Yeah, he does. Apparently the sheriff, after the Bradley's death and everything like that, was going through the house and found a shit ton of Ouija boards.
Yeah, Ouija boards everywhere.
And
he was trying to commune with the devil.
Right, well, he wanted to collaborate with Frank on a book to try to get his ass off the force.
Yeah.
And that's when Frank says, well, why don't you have your little buddy over there help you?
Yeah.
And that's when we see Dammers in the backseat of the car.
Yeah.
And
the sheriff is just kind of like, right, whatever.
But we also find out that Lucy can now see Dammers because she's like, oh, that Dammers, he looks pissed. And Frank's like, wait, you can... And she
reiterates the exact same line that he said to him. She's like, you know, when someone goes through a traumatic event, sometimes it can alter their perception.
Right. And then we get a needle drop on, it's not even the original version, which pisses me off so much.
I know, but it's a New Zealand band that was like friends with Peter Jackson, and he was like, hey, here you go. Here's a movie for you.
Right, but we get a needle drop on Don't Fear the Reaper. Originally done by Blue Oyster Cult. And the credits roll, and that is the movie.
That's that. This is one of my favorite movies. It's a straight up bloody machete up.
To the sky.
I think the acting is great. I think there's so much, like, it's all very over the top. Every single character is, like, overacting their character, but it's done in such a fun way.
Well, I mean, we also have to take into consideration that Michael J. Fox was also... he had Parkinson's at this point. He
Right.
found out that he had Parkinson's in the early 90s while filming, or right after filming Back to the Future.
Right.
Parts 2 and 3.
Right. You know, you couldn't really tell at this point. Obviously,
This
is
is before he came out publicly and announced that he had Parkinson's and all this and everything.
Right.
But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bloody machete up for me. I can't say enough good things about this movie. I think I've just talked about how, like, through this whole video, I've talked about how much I love this movie. I can't say enough good things. Bloody machete up.
I swore to myself I'd never give anything that's not horror a bloody machete up, but I have to. It's just, it's too good. It's too good of a film.
It's wonderful.
So we're going to get that straight out of here because we've talked about it enough. Don't you
Yes. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard enough about the Frighteners?
Yeah.
Let's see what we're going to talk about next.
Let's get the Frighteners out of here.
Woo! Next on our list is a movie that I'm thinking me and Hallie might have some disagreements on.
Sounds like it.
But it does have some really, really cool things about it.
The opening sequence for the film is fucking phenomenal, even though it's not plausible.
And I think you can all maybe figure it out just by us saying that the opening sequence is probably one of the coolest sequences in all of horror movie history.
Not to mention, they also tried to pull bait and switch with the opening, like, music and title card and everything like that, making you think that you got stuck into the wrong film or whatever.
Yeah.
The trope that has actually been done to more spectacular effect with Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
But we're talking about the, was it 2001?
2002.
2002.
Yep.
2002 Dark Castle original film, Ghost Ship. We told you it was coming. It's coming next week. So go watch the film, come back here, we'll discuss it, and we'll give you our thoughts on a very well rounded cast, honestly.
Absolutely. Very great cast.
That being said, we'll dive into that in 1 week's time.
Yes,
so
we will.
until then, be sure to slash that subscribe button.
And stab the like button.
And ringling that grave bell so you don't get lost in the mix and buried alive in all the videos that are on YouTube.
And until next time, as my shirt says, which you can get at our Etsy store, we will see you all in the afterlife.